Hi, all online. When it comes to China-US trade,
Trump said something that shocked the whole world. Especially people in Taiwan were really scared. What was it? He said that opening up the Chinese market is good for China. And also good for unification and peace. This really, truly frightened people in Taiwan. Does this mean he supports unification between Taiwan and China? I think deep down, he really is talking about unification. He really is talking about unification. He really shouldn't have said that, but he went ahead and said it. Because when China opens up its market, it becomes an even more capitalist society. That way, it becomes easier to talk about peaceful unification with Taiwan. But at this moment, politically, this is extremely incorrect. So the State Department immediately jumped in, saying, no, that's not it. That's not what he meant. They said he was talking about the unification of the US and Chinese markets. That's just an outrageous argument. You wouldn't use unification of the US and China to describe this. That just doesn't exist. But they insisted on arguing their point. And they kept stressing that the US position on China hasn't changed. And the position on Taiwan hasn't changed either, of course. Given the current situation, when 91% of the world's advanced chips are made in Taiwan, letting China unify with Taiwan is just impossible. So what happens at the same time? At the same time, China released a national security white paper. They once again emphasized that their long-term position hasn't changed. And that unchanged position is they are determined to unify Taiwan. Taiwan is considered an inseparable part. On top of that, they said that although they want to use peaceful means, they can't rule out the use of force. So the whole world is indeed reminding Taiwan. But is Taiwan really ready to stand up to China? Lai Ching-te said, if China wants to unify Taiwan, they will have to pay a heavy price. And in the end, they still won't achieve their goal. Foreign military experts have said, Taiwan should defend itself with cheaper, more asymmetric weapons. What they said was quite serious. In addition, I want to add something myself. That is to say, let me first add what I want to say about the economy. Ongoing economic resilience needs to be established immediately. You can't have a situation where, as soon as war breaks out, after just a dozen days, you run out of natural gas. And storing natural gas is extremely difficult. 40% of Taiwan's electricity generation relies on natural gas, and another 30 to 40% relies on coal. This is the biggest issue when it comes to Taiwan's resilience. Second, do we have enough food reserves? Third, is your power grid stable? Fourth, is your internal communications system secure? Is your military command and control stable? This stability is. China has already shown that it has the capability to cut your undersea fiber optic cables. If your undersea cables are cut, your external communications will be in serious trouble. The only option left is to use low Earth orbit satellites. But when it comes to using SpaceX's low Earth orbit satellites, there are major concerns, especially considering how close Elon Musk is to China. Will you even be allowed to use Starlink? Is Starlink reliable? Taiwan is currently looking into working with OneWeb instead. But for a place as big as Taiwan, deploying a couple hundred low Earth orbit satellites would be enough to maintain communications. This is a very important matter. These are all issues of resilience. As for this asymmetric military strength, first of all, everyone says that What about Taiwan? Should increase its national defense budget. Right now, actually. During Li Tinghui's time, it was 3%. During the Kuomintang era, under Chiang Ching-kuo, reached 5 or 6%. Under Li Tinghui, it was 3%, and it kept dropping. The lowest point in 2016, during Ma Ying-jeou's second term. At the very end, it was only 1.5%. Now it has been raised to 2.5%. The DPP says that they will raise it to 3% in the future, soon. But the United States says, in Taiwan's situation, it should be raised to 10%. I think it should at least be raised to 5%. However, the Kuomintang would never agree to that. After this recall, the hope is that if the DPP can control the seats in the Legislative Yuan, they'll be able to pass an even stronger national defense budget. All right, so what's the other biggest issue? The biggest issue is this. It's Taiwan's manpower problem. China has 2 million soldiers, 210,000 soldiers, but there aren't enough people actually serving. On paper, there are 210,000 spots, but in reality only 78% of those positions are filled, and a lot of people are dodging military service. There was a recent case, all avoid military service. So, with such a low birth rate in Taiwan, you want to increase the population of standing soldiers. It's really tough. Recently, they've already raised the salary to $3,000 US. $3,000 US a month. That's already pretty good. Quite good for Taiwan. And when they retire, after signing 2 contracts and retiring, they also get benefits. So, retired in about 10 years, leave in 8 to 10 years. After retirement, every year they have to do training for 2 or 3 weeks. A few of my drivers actually came from the military, so I'm quite familiar with them. But even so, there are still very few people who volunteer to join the military. This is actually a really tough problem to solve, if you ask me. If you want my opinion, people in Taiwan might not agree. Just hire some mercenaries outside. It's necessary, because it's just not possible to have enough people to serve in the military. And following the American model, after they've finished their service, you grant them Taiwanese citizenship. Bring in people from places it's impossible for the Communist Party to infiltrate, like the Philippines e.g. This would actually benefit Taiwan. It would be like the Gurkha Regiment. But instead, you'd have a Filipino regiment, and you'd require them to be university graduates. All right, when it comes to conventional warfare, right now, the most important of all priorities for Taiwan is what? The top priority is air defense. Taiwan will soon have 66 F-16 versus, and then over 100 more, which are F-16ABs upgraded to F-16 versus. In principle, aside from stealth capabilities, it's not afraid of mainland China's fighter jets. It isn't afraid of Chinese fighter jets. The F-16V has an impressive combat record. When it actually comes to fighting, it mainly depends on your air-to-air and command missiles. Plus, Taiwan has the PAVE-PAWS radar system. You have to understand, with the setup, even Russia can't control Ukrainian airspace. Ukraine can't really be compared to Taiwan because Taiwan has layers defense networks. First of all, it has Patriot missiles, then NASAMS, and then the Skybow system, specifically Skybow 2 and Skybow 3. Below these 3 layers, there's also the Javelin, which is an air defense missile. All of these together form a defensive network. As long as China's first strike doesn't wipe out Taiwan's air force, if you hide once and they can't gain the upper hand, the fight will drag on for long, because with air defense missiles combined with fighter jets, covering low, medium, and high altitudes, your defenses can be very tight. And if you're relying on ground-to-ground missiles to attack, for example, just look at how Russia is attacking Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't have to surrender, and they won't surrender. You can't force the other side to surrender just by bombing them. That's the point. But Taiwan absolutely needs to have enough ammunition. I don't know, this might be a military secret, how much they've increased ammunition production. One of the lessons from the Russia-Ukraine war is there's never enough ammunition. The US military doesn't have enough ammunition. And I see another thing that's really concerning. Something truly worth worrying about. Actually, it's not that scary if their warships come over. The US has all the Harpoon missiles, the most complete arsenal in the world. Air-to-ship, land-to-ship, ship-to-ship. They have all three types of Harpoon missiles. And then there's the Red 2, which can be used to attack warships. It's basically impossible to buy those. Taiwan should focus more on developing unmanned surface vessels or semi-submersible unmanned submarines. These cost-effective options for defense. Plus, the moment you get close to the shore, there's a ton of ammunition waiting for you. For example, tanks, M1A2s, self-propelled artillery and things like that. It's impossible for them to land. Just absolutely impossible to land. All right. Nowadays, people are expecting that there might be a test blockade of Taiwan in 2027. Foreign experts say Taiwan can lose. Mainly comes down to whether Taiwan's elites have the confidence to fight a decisive battle.